are going back to our psalm that we've been looking at, Shir, Hamaalot, Psalm 126. I'm hoping that you guys still have that paper for the psalm. I gave you a new paper that we're going to be looking at in conjunction with that psalm. It is the story of Joseph and his dreams. So, as we kind of go back to this final image in Psalm 126, near the end, where there's this guy who's been planting with tears. And we have associated this person with Jacob. And Jacob, he's walking around, he's crying every day, and one day he's going to come in happiness. He's going to be holding his sheep. Now, if that's Jacob, and we talked about how that it says that if they, grab it here.
You mean Joseph instead of
Joseph, sorry. No, Jacob actually. So Jacob's the one that's been crying.
Okay.
Yeah, Jacob is the one who's been crying since Joseph's death, as far as he knows.
Okay.
And so let me grab this psalm. There we go. All right. So those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, or those who go out sowing with tears, shall come home with joy, carrying their sheaves. So if we have associated this person with Jacob, we talked last time we were talking about this. We talked about how it was Jacob's tears. It was Jacob's expression of his love for Joseph that is actually the opening up for Joseph to be able to reveal himself to his brothers. Because Joseph seems to have been laboring under the misunderstanding that this whole thing that happened to him, this being put in a pit and then sold off to these Ishmaelites, these Midianites, and him being sent into slavery in Egypt, that this, he probably feels, probably believes, that his father was in on it to some degree. Whether it was his father's plan to begin with, or whether the brothers came back and convinced him this was the best direction for them to go, to get rid of this very arrogant brother. But because of Jacob's living out of his love for his son, his tears, his mourning, when Joseph finds that out, when that is revealed to Joseph, that is the moment when Joseph reveals who he is to his brothers. Okay? I think that's kind of where we were the last time. And we talked about how that dynamic of living out our love, that it has the same effect. It changes things for people. It opens people's eyes to what is really real. It has the capacity to open people's eyes to their worth. That they are actually loved. They are worthy of being loved. So it's very important for us to understand that when Jesus reminds us that the greatest commands are love God with all that we have and are, and to love our neighbors as ourselves, or as Christ has loved us. How important it is for us to actually live that way. because it's not about us. I don't know how many of you have been raised in such a way that Christianity was kind of just all about me. It was all about me making sure I lived a certain way. You know, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't chew, and I didn't go with girls that do.
Show you that, Laura.
But it was always about me. It was always about me not making mistakes. It was always about me living up to an expectation. It was simply, I need to make sure I don't do the wrong things. That was mainly what it was. It was mainly, don't do the wrong things, so that when I die, I go to the good place. It's shocking when we realize that even in the Old Testament, but especially in the Gospels, Jesus very rarely even thinks about teaching about an afterlife. Almost everything Jesus is teaching is about the now. It's about how you're living now. It's about how you're treating people now. It's about how you are releasing people from bondage now. That is what should be the focus of our life. Not, should I eat meat or not? Should I be a vegetarian or not? Should I, is that a really huge deal of whether I'm consuming this? Or is, I'm trying to think of something trivial. But so many things that we think are such a big deal in life that are so small in comparison to how am I loving other people. In fact, Jesus says that all of what the law was supposed to be for, every bit of it, really hangs on those two commandments. Love God and love others. And it's interesting that Jesus' final command to his disciples, a new command I give to you. And it was the last one he said, love others the way I've loved you. Let me just simplify it for you. If you'll do this, you'll be loving God with all you are. Love others the way I've loved you. And so if we can realize that's the thing. That's the thing that everything hangs on.
Here's an extra one, because I had one.
Did you get okay?
I had one from last week.
So it's interesting to me that we see this in this Old Testament story. Okay? So, as we continue on, I want you to think about this. As we look back at, it says, I wrote it at the top of this. Let me go back to that one. So it says that those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. He who goes in crying or in sadness, carrying seed, shall come back with joy, carrying his sheaves. So it's interesting that we see this thing in that where it's talking about tears, joy, in verse 5. And then in verse 6, it says crying with seeds, coming back in joy with sheaves. Okay, do you see that in those two verses? Okay, so I want us to think about the story of Joseph here. I want you to think about how, I'll find my place. All right. So there's a kind of a double entendre here with this idea about the grain, about the alma, about the wheat. Okay? That in the end, we're thinking about this person getting his wheat out of the seeds. But if we remember the story here, who or what are the sheaves? If we look at the story of the dreams, I'm going to read. It's in verse 6. It says, "Listen to the dream that I dreamed. There we were," speaking to his brothers. "There we were. And remember that once Joseph had a dream and he told the brothers, and it says they hated him even more. Okay, we're given that information before we hear the dream. Okay, they hated him even more, and then we get the dream. We were there we were, binding sheaves in the field, and suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." So, it's kind of interesting in this story that it starts out with people. It starts out with the brothers. But then very quickly, the brothers and Joseph kind of disappear, and they morph into us seeing them as the sheaves themselves. In fact, the brothers even say, "Are you going to reign over us? Is that what this is supposed to mean? You're the sheaf that stands upright, and we're all going to bow down to you?" So it's interesting that within the dream, the sheaves become synonymous with the brothers. Right? Okay. So, if we look at the psalm again, and we read that last little bit again, "He who goes in crying, carrying a measure of seed, shall come back with joy, carrying his sheaves." So, is there like a little double meaning going on here? That it's not just about, now because we know the story that goes after this, right? We know that what's going to happen is Joseph is going to rise to power, second in command of all Egypt, that he, because of him interpreting one of Pharaoh's dreams, and they know, and he realizes, okay, we got 7 fat cows, and then all of a sudden come along 7 skinny cows, and the 7 skinny cows eat up the 7 fat cows, but they don't get any fatter. And Joseph is able to interpret this dream and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have 7 years of great wealth, of great overabundance. But then right after that, there's going to be 7 years of famine. Here's what you need to do. Right now, start saving. Start taking all the excess. Start saving it up in the bank. And sure enough, exactly what he says happens. And Joseph is put in charge of all of the wheat. He's Mr. Wheat. He is Mr. Standing Up Sheep. So we know that what has happened is that Joseph has become second in command. He is Mr. in charge of the bank. He is Mr. Wheat. And so, one part of this psalm, one part of understanding it is to say that they're going hungry. They're in a famine. His family is not doing well because they don't have the things that they need, the sustenance that they need. And so, he sends his sons off, go find us some sustenance, go find us some wheat. And so he sends off his boys in search of grain, in search of food. And so part of the understanding of Joseph's dream is that the brothers, what the dad is sowing, sending out into the wind, sending out into, hopefully something's going to come of this, that they do find food, that they bring back food. But there's a double meaning here, because in Joseph's dreams, it's not just about food. Because the food actually represents them. And so when it says that he's coming back with joy, carrying his sheaves, we understand that this also means that he's getting his family back. He's getting all of the family back. He is coming in, embracing his sheaves. Do you guys see that? Okay? So that's going on. Let me see here. Let me find it. All right. So now I want to think about looking at this from Joseph's perspective. Okay. So let's do this. If I were to say to you, that Joseph is now in front of his brothers. They are speaking in Hebrew or Aramaic. There's a translator in that story. There's a translator that is standing there to be able to translate from their language to Egyptian. They don't know that Joseph doesn't need a translator. And so they don't know that what they're saying amongst themselves, because the translator's not translating right now, they have no idea that Joseph understands exactly what they're saying. They think, they're speaking and nobody understands, and so we're just having this little conversation. I don't know if you guys have ever had a thing where you could speak in code with somebody. You'll see kids, we got secret writing, and you're in class and maybe you develop some sort of secret code with a friend, and that way when you're passing notes and the teacher catches the note and opens it up, they can't read it. So I had a sneaky suspicion you would be one of those people. So they don't know. They don't know that Joseph understands what they're saying. Okay? So I want to suggest that there's something really interesting going on in that moment. Because I believe it's in this moment that Joseph finally understands what the dream was really about. I don't think anyone prior to that moment including Joseph, actually understood what that dream was about. Because immediately the brothers, when they hear the dream, they immediately interpret the dream. They immediately interpret the dream as it being about power. Which, if you think about it, is not all that unusual. The world, so often, that's really the number one thing that people are worrying about. That's the number one thing that people are concerned about, is about power. Who's got it? How are they using it? That's kind of a default way of thinking for human beings. It must be about power. And that tends to do a couple things. One is, if we're concerned about power, that I don't have it, or somebody else does and shouldn't, or how they're going to use it, the first thing that happens is typically we get pulled into fear about it. Fear, more often than not, turns right into anger. So much of the time where we get angry, it is about something that we are experiencing fear about. And that's exactly what happens with the brothers. They hear the dream. They're like, oh no. Don't tell me this arrogant little guy is going to get power too. Don't tell me this rascal over here who thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. Don't tell me he's going to get power too. Okay. And they become fearful that this might happen. Because they've seen how their father is with Joseph. I don't know if you guys realize this, but Joseph is not the actual firstborn in the family. Reuben is. Reuben is the actual firstborn in the family. But Joseph is the firstborn of the wife that he loves. So you can maybe imagine that Joseph is actually being treated a little bit more like the firstborn than the rest of the brothers think he should. That Joseph is being treated in a way that doesn't seem appropriate. And this just adds to their upsetness, their anger, their quickness to be angry about anything that makes Joseph look like he's going to get more appreciation, more power. And so they hear this dream and it's like, oh no. And that fear quickly turns to anger, or maybe strengthens the anger that is already there. And yet, I don't have the scripture in front of me, but if we look at the story of where Joseph is there, the brothers are in front of him, and he's listening to what they're saying, and he hears Reuben. And he hears Reuben saying, I told you. If we didn't let him out of that pit, it was going to go bad. And he looks at Simeon. Simeon, I told you. If you went through with what y'all were going to do, things were going to go bad. It was going to come back to bite us. And it says that Joseph remembered his dream. And he realized for the first time, this is what the dream was about. Right now, this moment, my brothers have come from famine, and they're in front of me, and they're kneeling in front of me. Because my sheaf, what I am in power over, the grain, I'm Mr. Wheat. My sustenance is standing up when theirs is making them bow. This is what that dream was about. Now, at this point, Joseph is still struggling with the interpretation of the dream. So we have, you can actually understand, oh, the dream was about this situation. That's what this was talking about. It was trying to get across, this moment is going to happen. But the problem is that the dream doesn't actually give any kind of explicit direction as to what to do in this moment. It simply says, this moment's coming. It's going to happen. But what to do about it, there's really not. I mean, if you think about the dream, it's right there in front of you, right? That's what I gave you. You got the dream. It doesn't really give an explicit interpretation of what should I do now based on this situation. What should I do? We see that Joseph chooses, he's having trouble deciding between the two different choices. What do I do? The immediate response is to go power, revenge, through the power I have. He says, well, I'm gonna do this. Go back and get the other brother. Then we'll see. And then he abandons that and he throws them in prison, all of them. So you see immediately the first response is, okay, I'm going to get them back. All this horrible stuff they've done for me, I'm going to use the power that I've got, and we're going to get revenge. It's all about power. And then he lets them go, does send them back to bring the other brother, but he doesn't send them empty-handed. He sends them with food. So it's almost as though Joseph, at this point, is still not sure about what he's supposed to do in response to the dream. It starts out with, we're gonna do power, we're gonna do vengeance, and then he kind of vacillates. He kind of tips over into, well, maybe it's more about providing sustenance. Maybe it's about mercy. And then they come back, and now he still hasn't told them who he is, and there's still this struggle. And this is when he hears Simeon and Reuben. And at first, he says, let me find this. So first, he says, why did God send me this dream? I mean, God, couldn't you have made the dream better? Couldn't you just lay out what it is I need to do? Couldn't you give me clear instructions about what I'm supposed to do about this situation? I mean, if I was God, or if I was Joseph, that's what I'd want. God, can you just lay it out for me? Can you just put it there in black and white? Tell me what I'm supposed to do. But he doesn't. He gives them the information about what's coming. But it's still open to Joseph about how to respond, about what to choose.
So how did they know that they had to do something there was a gap? I mean, I had a lot of crazy dreams, I don't think I have to do something, based upon, some of the dreams.
Right. Well, let me ask you this question. If you had that dream, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the very situation that was portrayed in the dream, however many years later, wouldn't be going, oh, dang, that's just like my dream. I mean, this is like, yeah.
Deja vu.
Yeah.
Deja. Do you guys ever get deja vu?
Yes.
Do you? Like this has happened before?
Yes.
Yeah. I've actually been getting this Vuja day. Like this has never happened before in my life. That's too. So, what if it's just like us? What if, when presented with a situation, whether or not I've had a dream that's telling me the situation's coming, but lying in front of me, sitting in this situation, standing in this situation, I have a couple of different options in how I'm going to respond to the situation. Do I choose to respond as we humans typically do first, with the power answer? Is that where my mind goes first? That I'm going to take the situation and my thoughts are primarily going to be about power. Does someone else have it, or do I have it? Am I going to live into that way of thinking, whether it's vengeance or it's holding somebody else down so I can rise up because I have the capacity right now to do so? Or is my mindset going to be, I am blessed to be a blessing? That too often we fall into very faulty thinking where we think about ourselves, and guys, again, this may sound political, but it's not. In this country, in this time period, in this culture, we are indoctrinated into this individuality. We think as individuals. We think it's about me. We think, I want it my way. The old Burger King commercial. I want it my way. Go for all the gusto you can get. I don't know if you guys remember that tagline. It's individual rights. It is all about me. And what happens is that Christianity absorbs that thinking, and now Christianity just again becomes just about me and about, am I doing the right things or not doing the right things, because I just want to go to not the hot place, if that's how we think about it, but I want to go to heaven and not otherwise. It's just about me. It's just about getting my ticket punched so I know where I'm going when I die. That's where this individualistic culture being absorbed into Christianity takes us. But it was never meant to be that way. See, what happens is we grow up and we we hear this language about being favored, about American exceptionalism. That we are a favored nation because we're a Christian nation. And we think about it as favoritism, about we're better than everybody else, we're more exceptional than everybody else. So God views our country as better than everybody else's country. He looks at me as an American as being better than everybody else. And I just need to make sure that I hold on to that favored status. I need to make sure I live and hold on to that favoritism. That's what my life's really about, making sure I hold on to being favored, to being better than everybody else, being held up above everybody else, about God caring about me and my country more than everybody else, or even my denomination more than everybody else's denomination. Whatever it is, we look at this as favoritism, not as being chosen to be the blessing to the rest of the world. This is not about me being lifted up, about my country being lifted up, about my denomination being lifted up, and being favored over everybody else. No, it's about me being chosen not to worry about holding on to my rights and my privileges. It's about being chosen to be willing to lay my rights and privileges down so that the rest of the world can be lifted up. And that's what Joseph is partially struggling with here. I've lived a life of favoritism. My dad has seen me better than everybody else. My brothers hate me because I've been held up and favored. But what we don't understand and what Joseph is dealing with here in his vacillation, in his going back and forth between, do I do this with power and revenge, or do I really think about, I have been put here to be a blessing to others. He's struggling with that right here. And it's not all that far off from us. What is my mindset? What is my core understanding of who I am and who I've been called to be? Do I see myself as favored, as lifted up, as needing to hold on to that status? Or do I see myself as chosen to be a conduit, to hold on to these rights and privileges that I've been given by this country, and holding on to them tightly and saying, no one's going to take these away, no one's going to wrest these things out of my hand, because I have to hold on to that. I have to hold on to that status, that favoritism. Or am I willing to say, yes, those things are things that I'm given, those are the things that I have, but I'm going to hold on to them loosely for the call of the kingdom. Is, where am I? I'm hoping you guys can see that I think this is actually where we should be. I'm not favored and held up. I am chosen. And I'm given the option. Will I live into that? Will I live into the status that I'm called to have, where I am willing to live out of humility and to live out of being a blessing to others? The things that I've been given are not for me to hold on to tightly, but for me to hold loosely, because they may need to flow into other people's lives to bring them out of places of injustice. It's interesting Because what if, and I'm throwing this out in the last 5 minutes. So, it's Reuben and Simeon. Reuben is the one who was the actual firstborn, who was saying we need to act out of our merciful choice, not out of our powered choice. We need to choose in this moment. See, because the brothers had the same moment. The brothers had the same opportunity in that moment to choose mercy over power. To choose to live as a conduit for the blessings as opposed to out of the favoritism that they wanted and using power to get it. They had a choice. Reuben spoke and said, let's choose to live out of blessing, not out of favoritism. Simeon did not. So what if Joseph, in his moment, where he realizes, oh my goodness, this is the dream. I'm back in the dream. They're bowing down in front of me. And he hears the conversation. And he's like, okay. Reuben did what he should have done, but you know what? I'm gonna do just what Simeon did. That's probably the way to go right now. Vengeance. Take him out. He was the one. Simeon was actually the one. He was thinking he was going to put Reuben in prison, but he put Simeon in prison instead. And so he remembers they had this moment too. And now Joseph is looking and he's remembering they had that moment. And the question is, how are we going to choose to think? Are we going to choose to think like Simeon and live out of the desire or the holding on to favoritism, of going to power, the vengeance route? Or are we going to go the path of Reuben and of eventually Joseph? But if you go back and you look at the story in Egypt, and the chapter's lost right now, it's 40-something, I think. But look at Joseph remembering what they did and struggling with what is the right way for me to choose to be. And you can see in the things that he does, he's going back and forth. Is this the way I should respond? I don't know. Maybe I should respond the other direction. And then he goes back the other way. It's back and forth. And sometimes I think that's how we are too. I think we're in the middle of a situation. Something's happened. And it might not even necessarily be something that's happened to us. Maybe it's something that's happening in our world, in our country. And maybe and we're not like directly involved, but there's still a moment where we have to decide, how am I going to think about this thing that's going on? Am I going to come at this, whatever it is, with the mindset of my favoritism? And that's how I'm going to think about it. And that's how I'm going to talk about it. And that's how I'm going to advocate for things to go. Or am I going to allow Jesus to transform my mind, my thinking, to where whatever it is, the mindset I'm going to have is not going to be about favoritism or favored status. It's going to be about mercy and blessing to be a blessing. And that's how I will choose to think. And that is how I will choose to talk about it. And that's how I will choose to advocate for what I think should happen moving forward. Guys, it's really, really easy for me to hear about a situation and for my immediate thought to be, how is that negatively affecting me? What's that taking away from me? How is that limiting me? And you know what? I don't often have to actually think about that way, because typically that is the way, wherever I'm getting this information about what's happened, that's usually the way that the information is couched. It's usually couched in a way, reported in a way, that immediately puts those questions in my mind. What is this taking away from you? How is this hurting you? How is this limiting you? And that has been going on for decades. Because that's the direction human beings tend to lean into. But instead, and so it is an active choice. It is an active thing that I have to think about and say, no, I will not be influenced by this information and by the way it's reported to make me think that way. I refuse. I will not see that in a selfish way and first think, how's that hurting me? How's that limiting me? What's that taking away from me? What rights is that taking away from me? What advantages does that take away from me? I will not think that way, because I'm not chosen to think that way. I'm chosen to think differently. And so the first thing I want to think about is, how can I be a blessing in that situation? If I can't do anything about it directly, how can I be a blessing in the way I think about it, in the way I talk about it, in the way I advocate for whatever it is? Will I choose favoritism, or will I choose chosen to be a blessing? Will I choose power and vengeance out of fear or anger, or will I choose mercy and blessing with whatever sustenance I can give, because I'm supposed to be the conduit of the blessing of God? All right. Father, it is amazing the things that are coming out of this story that I would never have expected. And it's so relevant to us today. I think it's been relevant all the time. Father, help transform our minds. Transform our thinking and understanding of what it means to be chosen. And help us let go of this favoritism thinking. Don't allow things to make us be afraid and angry and lean into power thinking. Father, help us that our first thoughts are about mercy and about love. It's hard sometimes, but we trust that you can do it. As the man who you asked, do you believe that I can heal you? You're probably asking, do you believe that I can change and transform your thinking? And Father, our answer is very much like his. I believe, but please help that part of me that has trouble. And we'll trust it in your hands. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Terry, how many siblings do you have in your family?
Me and my sister. supposed to have a big family.
Oh, you do, everybody.
Well, but what I'm saying is Laura wanted 6 kids to begin with. And
I
then
did too.
after,
Had to.
and then after 28 hours of labor with Jonah, it immediately dropped to 3. And then after Sabrina screamed for like 4 months, it said, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Couldn't hear myself.
I wanted 6